On today's episode of the Football Fellowship podcast, we're going to be giving our final 2024-25 Premier League predictions. We'll be working our way from the bottom of the table all the way to the top, saying where we think each team is going to finish and why.
And it is that time of the season. A lot of teams are filled with hope and optimism, and some teams are filled with worry and dread. And I've got to be honest with you, Toby, I found this one really hard. Last year, I was a bit more solid in my convictions, had a bit more of a layout of how I thought every team was going to play. This time, I think the teams in the Premier League, the quality between them isn't as big as I thought it was, and I actually quite struggle with this prediction. How did you find it, mate?
Yeah, pretty similar, to be fair. I definitely found it tougher compared to last year, especially in that mid-table region. It feels like a lot of teams are quite similar. A lot of teams are still making a lot of moves in the transfer market as well, which is something you definitely have to take into account, whether teams are going to be losing key players, whether they are going to be making big signings. And as well, towards the bottom of the table, especially with those newly promoted sides, I think is something where I found it quite difficult to know not just how well they're going to do and how their squads are looking, but also how they're going to play, and especially maybe how they learnt from the three newly promoted sides last year, all of whom were relegated, which I think is a big thing to take into account. So, yeah, definitely not feeling as confident as last year. I think I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and to be fair, you touched on them, so let's start with them. The three newly promoted sides. You had the champions Leicester City, and you had second place Ipswich Town, and you had Southampton, who won the championship playoff. Last year, like you said, all three newly promoted teams went down at the first time I'm asking. 2 seasons ago, all three newly promoted sides stayed up in the Premier League, and that was Fulham, Bournemouth, and Nottingham Forest. How do you see it this time around? Have you got any of them that you feel very strongly that they're going to avoid relegation?
I have one in my current predictions that is avoiding relegation. How strongly I feel on that? Not so much. I think it's fair to say it's probably just Vibes FC on this one. I don't really have too much of a reason. It's just more of a gut feeling. And it is Southampton. I've currently got them in 17th in my prediction. I think out of the three teams, I think all three teams play really, really good football, and we saw that in the Championship. Really, really good free-flowing, high possession, attacking football. And I just feel like out of those three sides, I think Russell Martin is maybe going to have the most pragmatism about him. Not really try and impress in terms of attacking football. I think he is going to tone it back a little bit, know when to play that football against the teams sort of in and around those relegation and lower mid-table sides. And I think when he is coming up against the big boys, I think they are going to sit back a little bit. And I think that's going to help them. In terms of their squad, I think it's a good squad. They've signed Downs and Harvard Bellis on permanence after having them last season in the Championship, which I think is really good, sensible moves. And I like their squad and I like the way they play. And I think if they are going to be bringing a three at the back with wing-backs into the Premier League, that always seems to transition well as well. So, yeah, at the moment, I've got them in 17th. Not my most confident shout, but yeah, definitely stick with them there for now.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So I didn't have Southampton avoiding the drop. I had them going straight back down. And I guess one of the things that I was thinking about, if a newly promoted side is going to be staying up, okay, that's fair enough. But which of the sides already in the Premier League is the ones going to be going down? Because if you take into account, let's say Nottingham Forest, who were in 17th last season on 32 points, if you remember the fact that they actually had a 4-point deduction as well, which meant they would have had 36 points, do you see Southampton or any of the new promoted sides getting 35, 36 points next season?
I think if it is going to be a team, I could really see Southampton going on a good run, and I feel like that's so important for teams who are in and around that relegation battle. If you can get 3-4 wins or draws in a row when you are struggling a little bit, that is huge, and you can carry that on through. I think it's when teams are sort of winning the odd game and then going back to losing is where it sort of struggles, when they're going up and down. The confidence isn't always riding high, whereas we saw last season in the Championship that Southampton are a massive, massive confidence side. When they're playing well, they are playing really well. The only worry, I guess, in that sense is that they also had the opposite. When they were losing games, they were losing a few in a row. So I think we could see that this season. I think maybe once Southampton have settled in and they get a good run, maybe around the Christmas period, I think that could be what could be their saving grace this season to keep them up. And in terms of comparison to Forest, yeah, Forest are probably still going to be down there again. Where have you got Southampton in your league table at the moment?
Yeah, so I've actually got them rock bottom. I've got them in 20th place. Out of all the new promoted sides, I worry for them the most, I think. I think in terms of I think why I have Leicester and Ipswich Town both ahead of them in my predictions, not saying where they are just yet, is because of the fact that I think they have more quality in defence and attack as well as experience. And I think out of all three of the new managers, in terms of Steve Cooper with Leicester, Kieran McKenna with Ipswich, and Russell Martin with Southampton, I actually think Russell Martin is the weakest out of all three of them, and I think he's going to be one that's going to struggle the most. And personally, I know they've made a lot of recruits in defence and attack in terms of improving both areas of the pitch. But I just think, despite the recruits they brought in, they do just seem championship to very very bottom Premier League level standard players, and the players who have ball which are quite young. I think in terms of Ronnie Edwards from Peterborough, Nathan Wood from Swansea, they're both two young centre backs. I think Flynn Downs is great, but there's a reason why West Ham sold him for a reason. And I think in terms of up front as well, Ben Brenton Diaz, yes, he got 6 goals in 14 games for Sheffield United on loan, but for me personally, is him on his own going to be enough, especially when Southampton have already sold Che Adams on a free when he got 18 goals last season, and Adam Armstrong, who in the two previous seasons in the Premier League only managed 2 goals in each of those seasons, 4 in total. So, yeah, I personally just think Southampton are the worst team out of all the three new Premier League sides, and I don't think they've closed that gap in the transfer window either. But I've only just got Leicester City just above them because I think while Leicester maybe have a better squad, maybe a better manager who's known to have Premier League experience with Nottingham Forest and Steve Cooper, I do think that the potential points deduction that Leicester City are going to be facing for breaking PSR issues means that I've also got them relegated and only just above Southampton in my predictions. I think the fact that they've lost Enzo Maresca is a big deal. I think the fact they lost their best player last season in Kieran Dewsbury-Hall is a big deal. They lost some Premier League experience. The players that they brought in haven't really filled me with too much confidence, and I think as well as Southampton, I've also got Leicester to go down.
Yeah, I've also got Leicester in 19th place as well, so that's nice to have an agreement early on. Yeah, agree completely with what you said. I think Dewsbury Hall is a massive loss. The impact he had last season was incredible for Leicester in the Championship. Again, that points deduction, a massive factor to take into account. And I just feel like maybe the appointment of Steve Cooper, I think, is a sensible one and one that makes sense for the Championship and for the Premier League season this coming season. In terms of that, their goal is ultimately going to be stay up. That is the basic goal of every promoted side, is just to stay up. I just worry that maybe it's too much of a change from Enzo Maresca's play style and how the players suit the system that Maresca was playing to transition to Steve Cooper's system, who I think is going to be a lot more defensive, a lot more sensible, and maybe that won't transition too well with the players that he has at the moment. So yeah, I've also got them in 19th, and I think they will be going down this season.
Yeah, I would actually disagree with you on the fact that I think that the play style that Steve Cooper was going to play with Leicester is probably a bit better for them, because I think Maresca at his time at Leicester last season in the Championship was a bit stuck in his ways, even when it was clear that some things weren't working, and he had very much his own play style, his own philosophy, and he was going to go with it no matter what. I think losing Kieran Dewsbury-Hall means that even if Steve Cooper wanted to play like Maresca did, he probably couldn't with his 12 goals and 14 assists last season. So I actually think that losing Maresca, losing Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, bringing Steve Cooper, I actually think it might suit them better. They're probably just going to be very much a defensive side, maybe 4-4-2, 4-5-1, maybe 5-4-1 or 5-2-3. Just trying to think of what defensive formation I haven't said yet. But yeah, I think they're going to go very much defensive, hit on the counter-attack with likes of Jamie Vardy and Patson Daka. But again, for me, I just think even if they did have a chance, I think that point deduction, because it's rumoured to be in around 10 points or more, and if that's the case, then is a newly promoted side, especially with the strength of the Premier League, going to get something like 50 points or maybe even 45 and hope that 35 is enough? I don't think so. So I think we can both agree that Leicester, unfortunately, are going straight back down. Which I think, if our maths is right, that you've also got Ipswich Town going down in bottom.
Yes, I have got Ipswich going down bottom of the table at the moment. It was quite close, I think, for me between Ipswich and Leicester, 20th and 19th place. Leicester, I guess it can come down to their points deduction, really, for me, how big it's going to be and how much impact that will have on their season. But yeah, for Ipswich at the moment, I've got them in 20th. I just have a bit of a worry with them, with how Burnley were last season under Company, and I it's just in the back of my head now. I feel like last season was such an impact on those newly promoted sides, and I think that's why I've got Southampton 17th as well is that I really underappreciated Luton, and I was really confident that they were going to finish bottom, really, really struggle, and they impressed me. Ultimately, did go down and were quite a way off in the end. But yeah, for Ipswich, I don't know. I just worry that McKenna's maybe going to be sticking to his play style. I think they're going to be very attacking again, not the most solid defensively, and I think there's a chance, with a lot of rumours going around this summer, that McKenna was going to be off, that I think he's going to try and play an attacking style, and whether that's enough to keep them up, I just don't know. I just got in the back of my head, they're going to go down rock bottom, and then McKenna's going to maybe get a move to a side in mid-table Premier League. Yeah, I think they've got a strong squad. I think Hutchinson's going to really impress in the Prem. He looked very, very good last season in the Championship. And besides that, Muric, I think, is a really good signing as well. I really like that, but to be honest, I don't know too much about Burnley. Ipswich in all honesty. So yeah, I can't really say too much more than that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that Ipswich are going to be a bit more like Luton Town were rather than Burnley last season. I think because of the fact they haven't been in the Premier League for over 20 years. I think the fact that they've very much got a squad which is comprised of League One players, if we're being honest, and that's fair. And I don't think any of Ipswich Town fans would berate me for saying that. I think there are very much some fringe players. But I think the additions of like Jacob Greaves from Hull City, Liam Delap from Man City, but it's on loan at Hull as well. I think they're definitely prepping themselves to give themselves a good chance in the Prem, but if they go down, it's not the end of the world. A bit like how probably Luton approached them last season as well. I think they're being very sensible. I do think, though, that if Chelsea, Manchester United, and also England would think about Kieran McKenna, there's got to be something about him which is worthwhile looking at. And so I've looked at the games that Ipswich played, only a handful, I'll be honest. I haven't had time to look through every single one. And I have been impressed with him. I do think they're very open, they're very attacking. But I think they will score goals regardless of if maybe the names aren't the biggest on paper. And I think they will do all right. But I've actually got them in 18th. So if you haven't been following, that means I've got all three newly promoted sides to go down. I've got Southampton in 20th, Leicester in 19th, and Ipswich in 18th. Because I just think, regardless of places, how many points can these newly promoted sides get? And if they were to stay up, who's going down instead of them? And I just thought to myself, if I'm being honest, I just personally can't see it. And I'm annoyed at that personally because of the fact that I think if that were to happen for a second consecutive season, it's really damning indictment on English football, and the football pyramid is something we need to change drastically to avoid that happening in the future. But I just don't see it personally this time round. So which team did you have? Because if you had Southampton in 17th, which of the current 17 Premier League sides do you have going down?
Yeah, I have got Nottingham Forest currently in 18th position in my prediction. Again, I like a lot of their players. I really like the attacking unit they have in terms of Alanga, Gibbs White, Chris Wood, Taro Awani. I've been really impressed with them in moments last season, but I think it is ultimately in moments. I'm just not sure they have enough, and I think last season they did really, really struggle at times. I'm not Nuno Espirito Santo's biggest fan. I'm not completely sold on him. I just out of the teams last season who were down there and struggling, they were the one side I think that we could see had potential to go down. I just think also they're struggling to find a little bit of balance in their midfield as well. They've got a fairly solid back line if it's consistent, and they can keep the similar back line. I don't know. I think there's a bit of struggle in balance between their attack and their defence. And yeah, ultimately for me, without the newly promoted sides, they are the weakest side in the league for me. So yeah, I've got them in 18th at the moment.
Okay, so we both have Leicester City and Ipswich Town going down. Are you happy to put Leicester then in 20th? Because we're going to say that maybe the point deduction will mean that they don't have a chance even to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Yeah, okay, I'd be fine with that, yeah.
So Leicester City in 20th. I have Ipswich Town going down anyway, so I'm happy to put them from 18th to 19th.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair, unless you wanted to go school. You've obviously got Southampton at the bottom, and I've got them in 17th. I just wanted to throw in a non-relegated, newly promoted side just to keep it interesting, really, more than any reason.
No, I don't blame you for it. But we have to
Yeah.
come to a
So
decision.
I'm happy to put all newly promoted sides going down, to be honest.
Oh, it is such a sad state of the game if it were to happen. I think I don't care which one stays up or multiple of them were to stay up. I just really hope that
Yeah,
at
yeah.
least one stay up. But yeah, are we doing it? Are we putting all three newly promoted sides down?
I think, yeah, if Forest is 17th for me, I'd be happy with that. I do think they are going to struggle this year. And
Okay.
Southampton in 18th or 19th is fine for me. Yeah, they're in a relegation position, whichever one they're in. So
Okay, shall we go because you had them staying up, which I think is only fair to keep them at the top of the new promoted side. So we'll put Southampton in 18th, and actually I did also have Nottingham Forest in 17th as well. I do agree with
okay,
you that I think that if there were to be a Premier League side to go down, I think it is going to be Forest. I think they have tried to slim their squad down massively, and I think they're definitely going a bit more in the more of a right direction. I mean, that they had 5 players on loan last season, they've all gone. I think Felipe, the Brazilian centre back, retired. I think they've let 5 or 6 different players let go on a free. They've sold like 4 or 5 as well, and some of it has been due to PSR issues. But I think they haven't recruited masses as well, so they're definitely going for more a condensed squad, more of a traditional size squad, something that Chelsea
mm.
can maybe learn from. But yeah, I definitely do think that they probably will be fine. Just because I think, yeah, 36 points, even without, if it wasn't for the point deduction, plus if Nuno was there for the entire season, I think they could probably get 2 or 3 more as well. But I do have them, I think, comfortably 17th. I think just the fact that they're able to score goals, maybe need a striker, maybe need a bit more centre back, but yeah, 17th for Nottingham Forest. So there's a tricky period coming up next then in terms of teams. You got, because I don't really think anyone else is in a relegation fight, but I think it'll be close in terms of points between the next 1, 2, 3 teams. No, 3 teams, 4 teams, I think actually. Who have you got in 16th, Toby?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you in this next sort of pack of teams. The team I do have in 16th, I am a little bit worried about, and I think if they had a different manager, I would definitely have them getting sucked into a relegation race. I was really, really worried from last season, and I think they had a very, very big drop off. And that for me in 16th position is Brentford at the moment. I think at the end of last season, I don't think Ivan Toney was particularly playing as well as we always see. I know they had a lot of injuries last year and they were changing systems quite a lot, but they just didn't really impress me much at all. And I'm worried this season again that they're going to get sucked into it. I think they'll have enough, and I think Thomas Frank will be able to adapt his team into something that works better than it did last year. And I still think they've got some exciting players going forward. I'm excited to see Kevin Schade again hopefully get a full season, because at the start of last season I think he looked really, really good. I was really impressed by him. I worry about their defence. It is ageing and they have had a few injury issues last season. Flecken, I think, was definitely getting better as this season went on, and I think he'll have a good season, but I just worry about them at the back a little bit. So yeah, for me, I've got Brentford in 16th.
So I had Brentford in 15th, and I had a similar
Mm-hmm.
vibe to them as well. So I don't feel too strongly about whether to put them 16th or 15th. But I do agree with you. It does feel like they're constantly undercutting their squad because they're they brought in good players to replace the players that have left. But obviously, I don't think that Flecken is the level of David Raya. I don't think Igor Thiago coming in. I mean, he's 23. He got 18 goals and 3 assists for the Belgian league for Club Brugge. He could set the world alight. But if Ivan Toney was to go, then I don't think that this coming season that he will be as good as Ivan Toney. I do think that in midfield, as well as the defence, it's getting on a bit. There needs a bit of refreshing. I think they're about to sign Fabio Cavalier from Liverpool for a £20 million fee plus some add-ons as well. So I think they are looking to add in areas which they can add quality. But I think they've also gone for players who can massively improve what they already have. They don't go for players who are just going to be a little bit better than they have. So obviously, I think it was last summer they tried to sign Brennan Johnson as well from Nottingham Forest. So they do have money. They do try and improve the side. It just hasn't quite worked out. Injuries played a massive part, as it did for most Premier League teams, which we'll probably talk about. And the fact that I think they had 4 or 5 players missing because of AFCON in January and February. So yeah, I don't think they're going to be a relegation race. But I'm actually pretty happy to put them in 16th and agree with you if that's all right.
Yeah, I would like to hear who your 16th place side is first, though, just in case. Just in case. Who have you got?
Well, you were talking about who you had in 16th, and I was like, oh, you'd be worried about the squad. I was like, yep. And you were like, if it wasn't for the manager, and I was like, yep. And then you said Brentford, and the entire time I was thinking about Fulham, actually, because I think they are a solid Premier League side, but like I've just said for Brentford, I think they're constantly undercutting their team in terms of who they sell and who they bring in to replace him. Yes, I mean, you cannot find a replacement for João Palhinha, a like for like, because he is a world class defensive midfielder, one of the best in Europe. And you cannot replace Willian, Tosin, and Bobby Deck over Reed, but they played a lot of minutes for them last season. Yes, they signed Ema Smith-Rowe, which initially I was a bit skeptical about because about where is he going to play, because you've already got Andres Pereira playing in the number 10 position. But I think Smith-Rowe is probably going to play on the left-hand side, cutting in, and then he's going to have Anthony Robinson bombing down his outside, so he's going to be probably playing more in the middle anyway. And so that's fine. They've also got Ryan Sessegnon, who, a good player on his day, needs to get fit, and going back to Fulham, a club that he knows before he left to join Tottenham, I think is a good signing for him. And the fact they've also signed Jorge Cunha from Villarreal for 5.4 million, linked also with Diego Carlos, who's a centre-back from Aston Villa, who I think would make them better as well. I do worry about the goals as well. I think that Muniz at the second half last season, when he did, get 9 goals, it was a bit unexpected. No one really expected that from him. Obviously, remember Fulham loaned in Armando Broja from Chelsea because they thought he was going to play. Had that clause in his contract about if they doesn't play a certain amount of games, they had to pay more to Chelsea, and they had to pay it. Also, Raul Jimenez, obviously not the same player, unfortunately, ever since his injury. And I just think that if it wasn't for Marco Silva, I'd potentially be putting them a bit lower. But I just think that they're going to be fine, they're going to be safe, but it's going to be one where I think they flirt with relegation but aren't really dragged into the race at all.
Yeah, some really good points there. And especially, I think Palhinha is the key one to sort of underline. Is he is one of the best sort of defensive midfielders in the league last season. He does so much to protect that back line, and even saying that, I do think they're pretty solid for them. I do like them. I think they've got a good number of players, and as you said, Marco Silva's a good manager. They are in that pack for me as well, in a very similar position. I've got them up in 14th. I think that if Muniz can get 15 league goals, I think in the season, I think that's enough for them to be way off relegation. I think they've got enough goals around them. I think Emil Smith-Rowe is someone who's can quite comfortably come up and pick up goals. Andres Pereira as well. I think he gets good numbers as well as even Traore. He doesn't even start half the time, but coming off the bench, I think is a really good option. I think they'll be okay, Fulham. I think they will be okay. So I've got them in 14th at the top of that sort of next pack of teams for me.
Yeah, so in that case, I'm happy to put Brentford 16th because I wasn't sure between them and Fulham. And Fulham are kind of, I'm trying to be a bit different. I'm like, which teams could potentially struggle? I'm like, Fulham could struggle, but I don't think they will necessarily. So yeah, I'm happy to go for Brentford in 16th. What they do in the transfers might change that, but I think for now, based on the evidence that we have so close to the start of the season, I think Brentford 16th. So, which also means then that I've revealed my hand about who I had in 15th, but you haven't. So who have you got in 15th then, Toby?
In 15th, I've got Bournemouth at the moment, and I think this is probably dramatically changed to me in the last few days with Dominic Solanke going to Spurs. I think if he was still there, and maybe if they signed one or two more players by now, I think they will 100% now with Solanke gone. They almost have to. Then I could have easily pushed them up a number of positions, maybe even as high as like 11th, 12th. I think they definitely could have been there comfortably, way off relegation. But I just think it's such a massive, massive loss for them. And we touched on it last week in the podcast. That problem Bournemouth needed to fix if he stayed was that other players need to step up their goals and step up their finishing and start performing their XG a lot better than they were. And now with Solanke gone, who was an exceptional finisher last season, was really, really pivotal for them in creating attacks, not only finishing them. Now he's gone, it is a big, big worry. I like the signing of Sinisterra from Leeds. I like a lot of the wingers they have. I love Semenyo. I think he was exceptional. I think we'll see a bit more of Traore and Utara this season, hopefully. Some really good attacking players. I worry about them. And Iraola and his style of play, I think, is so reliant on that striker that I've bumped them down to 15th. And I hope in a way they prove me wrong, because last season I was really impressed by Bournemouth and I was really excited to see them again this season. So, yeah, 15th at the moment for me.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I had potentially Bournemouth maybe even challenging for the top 10, maybe even for Europe because of how well I thought they did last season, and this season they're really going to kick on even further. But I do think, like you said, they have so many talented wide forwards and number 10s. You didn't even mention Alex Scott, who was plagued by injuries last season as well. He's got a big part to play if he can stay fit. But that striker, that number 9, he is the foil for the rest of the attack. And without Slanky, I had them in 14th actually, just because of the fact
Hmm.
that I had them actually. I think I had them in 11th or 10th to start with. Then Solanke got sold to Spurs, and I was like, do you know what? I just can't. Regardless of who Bournemouth bring in, they're not going to hit the ground running. And if they were, then I think sky's the limit for Bournemouth. But I just can't see it because he did such a good job. 19 goals, 3 assists. I just don't think you can replace that, especially considering I think Dominic Solanke is very clinical as well for Bournemouth last season. He didn't get too many chances, so I do. I am inclined to agree with you, but I am also thinking maybe Fulham in 15th and Bournemouth in 14th.
Yeah, I'm more than
Thoughts?
happy that I was going to suggest that myself. Yeah, I think my heart wants to put Bournemouth a bit higher because I really really like them and I really like Iraola. So I'm more than happy. I think for me to drop Fulham down one, it's just a straight swap for me. So yeah, that works. I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. So in 16th we go Brentford. So 15th will go Fulham, and 14th will go Bournemouth. Okay,
Yeah,
which
that sounds good to me.
which then means that we are now up to 13th. And in 13th, I've gone for Wolverhampton Wanderers and Gary Neal's men, just because they had a very good season last time round. But having a good season for them just means, I think, just not being in a relegation race. And I think if they were to be 13, that'd be perfect for them. But they have sold some two key players. They sold Max Kilman to West Ham for 40 million, which I know he played every single minute of the Premier League last season, all 30 games, but I think 40 million, while I think Maximum's a good player, is probably a bit steep. And also the fact that they sold Pedro Neto to Chelsea, which has come out very recently in the last couple of days. That one's a bit more of a blow, in my opinion. 2 goals, 9 assists, but he only played 20 matches. And when you have one of your best players, and especially at the club the size of Wolves and where they're on the table, you need your best players playing every single minute. So again, the fact that they've got almost 100 million for 2 players, yes, they're the 2 of their best players, but I'm not too worried about Wolves. But I had one where maybe I thought maybe the front 3 could maybe go on and get even more goals next season, especially with the addition of Jorgen Strand Lawson on loan from Celta Vigo. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like he's going to be playing with that last season's front 3. So yeah, I think 14th for me for Wolves. I couldn't really put them any higher.
Yep, I've gone exactly the same. I've got Wolves in 13th too. I had, again, the same as Bournemouth. I honestly think I could have had Wolves pushing top half, even maybe as high as 8th, ninth. I was really, really impressed with them. And I think if they had still had Kilman, still had Neto, and their starting 11 was fully fit every week, they would 100% be pushing up for those sort of high mid-table places easily. I think Neto is a big, big loss. Didn't play a lot, so I do not blame him at all for taking that money. I just think he did have a really, really big impact when he was playing. Such a creative player. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they sort of shape up their front line now. Will it be Larson up top with Hwang on the left and maybe Cunha pushed out to the right? Or will it be still Cunha up top, Hwang on the left, and maybe Sarabia, who we saw play a number of minutes, who again in moments was really, really good at covering Neto and being the creator in that Wolves side. So I think they'll have a good season. I think they still look good. I still really, really like Gary Neal and the system he plays. Their wing backs again. Ait Nuri, I think, is another one who's one to keep an eye on this season. Really, really good end to the season last year. And yeah, 13th feels about right for Wolves for me.
Yeah, perfect. And Wolves in 13th. Sorry, I misspoke. I thought I might have said 14th for Wolves, but I meant 13th for them. Which then means
Hmm.
then we are
Yeah.
into very firmly middle of the table and 12th place. So this is the last team before I got into the teams which I thought were competing potentially for the Conference League and Europa League places, or at least had a chance depending on how well the season went, injuries, and if they brought in more transfers. But who have you gone for in 12th, Toby?
In 12th, this is the third team I'm going to be saying this for now that I 100% could have had them higher, but there are still a few question marks over their head. And for me, in 12th place, I've gone for Everton. some recent news come out potentially that they may have another points deduction coming their way this season. Still not quite scoring enough goals. The XG underperformance is huge, but I still really, really, really rate them. Third best defence in the league last season. Branthwaite, Tarkowski, and Pickford, absolutely exceptional, and I think they'll carry that on, no doubt, this year. I like the signing of Ndai as some competition up front, again, for Calvert-Lewin and Beto. Hopefully one of them will be able to get firing. Not too sure how much. I don't think any of them will be getting any more than sort of 12, 13 goals, but hopefully the players around them will be able to pick up enough. And in a strange way, I think the sale of Onana is a really, really good one for Everton. They needed to recoup some cash, needed to sort their finances out. And for a lot of the games, he wasn't even starting for them. So to be able to get 50 million, I think is a great bit of business for them. Sean Dyche, lead them to 12th this season comfortably. Get in that mid-table, get away from the relegation zone, and build on in the next coming seasons when hopefully all of this sort of points deduction stuff that they can leave in the past and really focus on growing and get them back to where they belong, challenging for those low European places, because at the moment I think they've got the quality to push on and do so.
Yeah, so I didn't know about the potential points deductions again for this season. I haven't seen any of that, but funnily enough, I did also have Everton in 12th. We think
Nice.
too much alike at times, which doesn't make for great content, but it's fine because we can talk around it. Because last season, obviously, they got 40 points. If it wasn't for the point deductions, 8 points, they would have been in 12th place anyway, which is actually where I think they're going to be. Yeah, the only worry was the XG underperformance, because depending on what website you look at, it can be anywhere between 15 and 20, and that is absolutely massive and it's frankly ludicrous. I mean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Beto, Decore, they all need to fix up this season because they cannot underperform their XG by that much. But say they just even match their XG, then, they could be even higher than 12. That could be a potential for Everton, especially if you think about this as the last season in Goodison Park as well. I think that would be a real motivating factor in the last few games of the season for Everton to do well. I do agree. I think selling Onana for that fee to Villa, I think, was a decent bit of business for them. And I also think the other decent bit of business is keeping Jared Branthwaite, because he did look like he was going to go to Man United at one point to try and help with PSR issues. That doesn't look like it's going to be an issue anymore. And I think Branthwaite's going to be staying probably at least for one more season. I can see him maybe, if he has another good one, leaving next summer. But I think keeping him for now, bringing in Jacob Byrne as well from Lyon, the Irish centre-back, at least he can then, be deputised, get used to Sean Dyche and how he wants to play. And then if Branthwaite wants to go, then you can start straight into the side. Yeah, I've got no issues whatsoever about Everton in 12th, and actually think that's a perfect place for them.
Nice, yeah, another agreement there. We'll stick them straight into 12th. And now moving up, I think we're sort of getting into another batch of players here. Teams who we think are going to be mid-table, but maybe could push for those low European places, looking potentially for Conference League football. And in 11th place of that first team in this new batch, who have you gone for?
So I've put them in 11th, but I don't like it. But I'm not going to change my opinion on it now, just because I don't think I like it. But okay. So I've gone for West Ham, which I'm trying to justify on the basis that it's a new manager in Julian Lopetegui replacing David Moyes. It is a whole host of new players coming. I mean, they brought in Max Kilman, Somerville from Leeds, Guilmera from Palmeiras, Fulkrug from Dortmund, Rodriguez from Real Betis, West Fordingham on a free from Sheffield United, Jean-Claude Debida from Nice. They look like they're going to sign Aaron Masaka as well. And it's just a lot of change and a new manager at a club that can sometimes be a bit volatile. Sorry, West Ham fans. I don't mean that in a mean way, but yeah, I think, it is your own club and it can be at times. And I just think they have a very difficult start to the season. I think they're probably the most difficult start on paper according to fantasy football, which is what I was looking at for the fixture difficulty. And if they get off to a bad start, then I think the mainstream media could jump on them saying, you shouldn't have sacked David Moyes, what are you doing, trying to change the way, trying to fix what's not broken. But I did think it needed to change. I think the style of football was incredibly boring. Every week we used to come on the podcast, say it's boring, don't really want to cover West Ham games, so we had to. But I think it's something to look forward to. I think they'll have a bad first half of the season, and I think the second of the season they'll pick up. I actually don't want to put them 11th, but that's where I had them, so I'm going to stick to my gut. I think they could probably be more like 9th or 8th, so I don't really mind if you had someone else here and if you had West Ham a bit higher up, but I had them there, so I'm going to stick with it. West Ham in 11th. Who have you got?
Shall I go for where I've got West Ham or who I've got in 11th? What do you reckon?
Who you got in 11th?
In 11th, again, this is one that I don't like either.
Okay.
I honestly have no idea what to think of this team this season. They could be as high as 6th. They honestly, for me, could be as low as 14th, depending on where things goes. They're a really strange club, especially in comparison to their XG and their expected numbers, and maybe where they should be. And they're a team very close to my heart, and they are
Uh,
Brighton in 11th, is what I've gone for. I honestly have no idea what to think of Brighton this coming season. The new 31-year-old manager in Hertzler come in from St. Pauli. I just, I honestly have no idea what to think of them. I don't know what their sort of starting 11 is going to look like. They seem to have a really, really big squad. A lot of players coming back from injury. We'll be seeing Solly March and Mitoma back in the side this season. Still unsure who is going to be their starting number 9. Are we going to see Ferguson a bit more this year? Is it still going to be Welbeck? How much of a loss is Pascal Gross going to be? I think they have quality in other areas to replace him, but he's been such an influential player for Brighton over the last 5 or 6 years and one of the most underrated players in the league for me. I just don't know what's going to happen. I could honestly see him coming in and being absolutely incredible and they get 5th, 6th place, or I could see it being potentially too much change, not enough experience in the side, and them dropping right down as we saw last season. I think last season at times Brighton were quite disappointing. If they didn't have that strong start, they would be down in sort of 14th, 15th last season. Still struggling with a lot of the same issues they've had the last few years in terms of finishing. So honestly, I have no idea. So I stuck them in 11th as sort of as a safe bet, really.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I had Brighton actually in 10th place, and very similar. I had no idea where to put Brighton, so I went right bang, right in the middle of the table. Just go there and just leave me alone because I try to look as much about the preseason games and have been lining up, but I just think that it's so unpredictable. And Roberto De Zerbi rotated his side so much the last 2 years that I don't really know who was the starting 11 for him really, because you also had to account for injuries. They've had to do it in Europe as well. But if you look at the season as a whole last year, they had the first half of the season, they did really well. And ever since that Europa League knockout a game against Rome, I think it was, when they got knocked out of the competition, and badly, I think it was 4-0.
Mm.
Ever since then, and Roberto De Zerbi being linked with other clubs, it's all been downhill from there. And so I think that the true Brighton is the Brighton we saw in the first half of last season. However, how are they going to play, and is it going to be to the quality of some other sides? Because I don't know. I do like the midfield additions they have brought, despite the fact they lost McAllister and Caicedo last summer. They've lost Pascal Gross, like you mentioned, and probably Billy Gilmore as well this summer. I do like Mats Pfeiffer. I think he's one of the best defensive midfielders that are out there in the market from Feyenoord. I do like Malik Yaku from the Swedish league. I'm not sure if I'm even pronouncing that right, but he looks like a very promising player, only just 18 years of age. They've still got Baleba, I think it was from last year as well, who's only going to be a year older, more accustomed to the Premier League and help them out. They've also got the experience of James Milner in there to really help that young players out. I do think Welbeck will still just do a decent job up front, and I do think that their X factor is the plethora of wide players they have who on the day could be world class, like I said, Matoma and Marshall coming back, but they also have oh god, I can't remember, Bonanante, who's gone. I think he's going to leave on loan, but they also had
Yeah, Leicester on loan.
Adingra, and there was another one as
Mm.
well. They just keep spawning so many wide players.
Yeah,
And
they've signed
Ciso,
Minter from Newcastle. Minter from
Minter,
Newcastle looks
Minter from
really good in
Newcastle.
pre-season as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Well, I know why Newcastle decided to go for PSR issues, but he looks like another one, as well
Mm.
as Julio and Ciso, who I was forgetting as well. So I do agree with you. I have no clue. And because I have them in 10th, I'm inclined to go, should we just put Brighton in 11th? But I really don't know. Because Brighton could be, they're a lot less dysfunctional than some of the other clubs ahead of them. So I really, honestly, I don't know what to do here, Tobes. You're going to have to help me out.
Okay, shall we go for
Who
your
have you got in
ninth
9th?
place team? Yeah, so in ninth I've got West Ham, and in 10th I've got Palace. Who have
So,
you got in ninth?
so in 9th, I've gone for Crystal Palace, and in 10th, I've
Okay,
gone for Brighton. And I'll be honest,
yeah.
I I am on the Oliver Glasner Crystal Palace hype train. But I do think that
Mm.
losing Michael Elise is going to be a bit of an issue for them because I think the front three of Mateta, Eze, and Elise was frightening at the last few games last season. But also, was that just a bit of a purple patch? Because, I mean, I think they beat Man United 4-0. They beat Aston Villa like 5-0, something on the last game of the season. Are those games, if they were to be played in the middle of the season when it's crunch time, is it really going to be that one-sided? I don't think so. And also the fact that if they were to
Mm.
lose Mark Gay, he's been linked to Newcastle. Newcastle made 3 bids from him now. If he leaves, that's going to be a bit of a blow. Whoever they bring in probably won't be to the same quality. Not that he was playing towards the back end of last season anyway. So it's a tough one with Crystal Palace because I think first and foremost, as a Palace fan, you probably want them just to be probably exactly where they were and just play better football because that's the selling point after second Roy Hodgson bringing him in, Glasner. So they have made good recruits in Kamada and Sarr going forward. Um, but I think the potential upside, I think Crystal Palace probably ninth or eighth is their maximum, whereas
Mm.
maybe West Ham and Brighton could potentially go higher than that. So should we say? I don't know.
But they
I'm now.
also both. I think West Ham and Brighton could also go lower than that. West Ham is a funny one. I really like their transfer window, and I
Yeah.
think they've signed some. I think Kilman, Somerville, Fulkrug, Tadibo, and Guillermo as well. I think West Ham, for me, have had the best window in terms of quality and upgrades in their side. And Aaron Wan-Bissaka as well, I think, coming in at right back. I'm really impressed by the window, but I'm worried, same as you, that it may be too much too fast.
Yeah. I will say though,
So I'm not sure.
I think 11th is probably the lowest I'd have Crystal Palace. I think they're, for me, I'm pretty certain
Mm.
Crystal Palace somewhere being between say 8th and 12th, and but West Ham and Brighton could be higher as a close to maybe like 5th, but they could also be lower in terms of like 14th. So it's where we want to
Hmm.
go. Who do we have more faith in? Do you have more faith in Brighton or West Ham?
I'd probably say West Ham for me at the moment. I'd be happy to drop. Oh no, yeah, it'd be because I've got West Ham in ninth, so I'd be happy to drop them down to 10th if we meet in the middle on that, and then Brighton down to 11th and Palace in ninth.
Where did you have Palace? Sorry, Toby.
So I originally have Palace in 10th, but I'd be happy to put them up to ninth because I've been really impressed by Glasgow and Palace, and I think their starting 11 is really strong. And I think if they can work out a replacement in that right wing, whether that's going to be Saab, whether it's going to be Kamada, whether it's even going to be um, potentially even Edouard sort of playing on the right behind Mateta, I think they've. I think if Palace get it right, get a strong start, I think it'll be enough, and I think they'll be more consistent than Brighton and West Ham probably.
But what I will say is, and now I'm talking to myself, and I think I'm actually going to put, I'm willing to maybe to put Crystal Palace a bit lower, maybe in 10th. It's just because with no Elise, Eze is so crucial to them, and if he doesn't have the best injury record either. Plus the fact that
True.
Mateta was at the Olympics, sorry, with France as well, so he's not going to be there for the first few games of the season, probably not until September. Then he's probably going to get himself back up to fitness, so he can miss the first 5 games as well. They are a good side, but was it a purple patch? Just 13 games enough to go, right, all of a sudden they're going to be challenging the other teams who are going to be for Europe and just be outside of them.
Yeah.
West Ham were there consistently before last season in the league. So now I'm now thinking to myself, I think I'm agreeing with you now. I'm thinking maybe Brighton 11th, Crystal Palace 10th, West Ham 9th.
Well, I mean, that's what I've got. I don't want to just make it my table, but if you're happy with that sort of us talking and thinking about it, and that is the positions that they finished in last season, as well as boring as that is, but ultimately it probably is the best thing to go off really sometimes.
Yeah, I think I'm more likely to be happy living with that than if you go it that way rather than any other way, because yeah, even though I had West Ham in 11th, I do, like I said right from the beginning, I do think that they could potentially do much better than that, and I
Mm.
wouldn't be surprised if they're even trying to, you know, 6th and 7th really. But it just the too much change and the tough start. How well will it go? If they do incredibly well, then you could be talking about maybe even Champions League quality the way they've got the side, and
Mm.
if they're lucky with injuries. I mean, the whole squad you look at it and think, yeah, if you had all those names playing from Man United, you could see them being like, okay, yeah, they're going to get top four. So just because they're West Ham, all of a sudden it's like no. But yeah, I'm happy to keep West Ham in ninth.
Okay, nice. We'll go for that then.
Yeah.
And now moving into potentially those European places with 8th place. Who have you got?
So if I'm right in saying, I'm pretty sure 8th place just misses out. But I
I
do
think if the
remember,
cup competitions go right, isn't it? They can sneak
yeah,
in potentially.
yeah. But I do remember looking at last season's table, and I think the difference between 8th and 4th was just 8 points, and that is not a lot between some top quality sides. But I just looked at it and I just thought, who do I see as the least likely to be competing? And I just think it's Chelsea, and I've got Chelsea in 8th because obviously
Wow.
Mauricio Pochettino left the club at the end of last season, brought in Enzo Maresca. Pre-season's gone terribly. They've lost Thiago Silva, who's a leader and the captain. Reece James is now back from injury, but then he got injured again recently, so he's out again. Enzo Fernandez is now the captain of the club, going to be for the rest of the season after his old situation with chanting about French players after winning the Copa America with Argentina. Chelsea players coming out and saying, unfollowing him, saying it's a disgrace, calling him out, and now it's all water on the bridge, and he's now captain. I don't see it. I don't. They've got like five goalkeepers on the books, and they've still got Robert Sanchez in goal. I don't quite understand that. They've signed Pedro Neto, which is a great signing, but they've also got on the left hand side McCallum Mudryk and Raheem Sterling, and on the right hand side they've also got Cole Palmer and Noni Madueke, and now they also want João Felix. They sold Conor Gallagher, who was one of the best players and the best midfielder last season, and they spent £200 million on players who couldn't be better than a homegrown player, and they sold him, and the board continues to be whole. I don't know. I just don't like what they're doing. I can't see a vision. I can't see the plan. It just seems like to me that Chelsea are selling their best players and buying young players in order to sell them on for more profit. And then once Todd Bowley and Clay make the money back, they're going to sell Chelsea and just leave the mess behind. So I just can't see it. I really can't see it. So I've got Chelsea in 8th. And when we were talking about West Ham, Crystal Palace and Brighton, I was thinking, you know what, I might even be tempted to say Chelsea even lower than some of those because I personally just can't see it this season.
Wow. Yeah. And a lot of those points, I agree with you. I don't really see. I just don't see what the owners are trying to do. I know you're saying like they're trying to sign young players and sell them on. I definitely think that's in the back of their mind and trying to get the most out of their returns. But for me, there does have to be some sort of clear footballing plan for that to work. If you're signing these young players and they're not playing well and your team's not playing well, nobody's going to buy them. They'll just be waiting down their 6-7 year contracts and maybe inevitably leave on a free when they're about 30. But for me, for Chelsea, I just feel like the quality in their side is just too good to be finishing 8th at the moment. And I think the amount that Chelsea have spent, I know it doesn't really matter, but I just feel like the amount they have spent, they can't be finishing that low again. I just like the players that they have at their disposal now in Nkunku, Palmer, Neto. I think Madueke's looking sharper every game he plays. Fernandez and Caicedo. I think the quality they have in their team. I think Maresca is going to be able to get enough to carry them up. And last season they still weren't great, and they finished 6th. And they had a really good run once they started playing, once they found their rhythm, and I think once they had a solid starting 11. And I definitely think that's what is trying to happen. I think we can see Carl Will and either Fofana or Badiashile finally being like a starting centre-back partnership. I think left-back when Cucurella obviously is coming back into the side. Malagusto's been filling in there at the moment by the looks of it. And, well, he'll probably actually end up being right-back with Reece James out. I think there is enough there for them to do similar to what they did last season and still have some players I think will really shine. So as much as I agree with everything you have said, and I still think they've got a long, long way to go to be back to where they were, I think just compared to the other sides around them, for Chelsea, for me, I've gone for them in 5th.
5th?
Yeah.
Oh my God, no.
I think they do have enough still to be up there. I 100% agree with everything at the club, and the way they are managed, I think, is really, really poor. But I just think this quality they still have in that squad is still better than a lot of the teams around them, and I think if they can get a good run, as I said, get a good rhythm, I think they can push up to 5th.
I cannot get on board with that, so we'll have to come up to some sort of compromise. I think whoever out of these teams that we're talking about between first and eighth, who finishes in eighth, I think it's likely that they won't have the same manager come the end of the season. Who have you gone for in eighth then, if you haven't gone for Chelsea?
Yeah, in eighth I've gone for Newcastle. I I like parts of Newcastle, and I really like Isak and Gordon. I think they were exceptional last year, and again, I think they're going to have brilliant seasons. Really impressed by Bruno Guimaraes again. I know their defence was hit by a lot of injuries last season, but I think even if they weren't, I just think the way that they are set up always looks really, really open. And for me, compared to the other sides around them, I think do have better defences, do have better setups, and do have better ways of preventing themselves from being exposed when they do go forward. I'm not particularly sold by the signings of Lewis Hall, and I think Kelly's an okay player. I think he's good. I just don't think Newcastle are really pushing on as much and as quickly as I thought they were. Not that that's a bad thing. I think they're doing it sustainably, and they're not sort of overreaching what they're trying to do in their long-term project, which I think is 100% a good thing. I just don't think they're quite there yet. And I still think there's a big gaping hole on the right side of their attack. I don't think any of their other wingers, I think, are really that exciting. Yeah, eighth place for me. I still think they'll be good. It's just the teams around them I think are a little bit stronger.
So I've actually, this is quite funny. You can't see my reactions, but I actually went for Newcastle in fifth. So we've got the complete opposite.
Brilliant.
We'll have to come to some sort of compromise. But I disagree on the fact that I think you said the defense isn't as good as some of the other sides. I think compared to Chelsea defense, I think Newcastle defense is much better, considering not last season, the season before when they got Champions League football and got fourth place. They're still going to have the same defense, which is going to be even more improved. They've got Nick Pope, who's going to be returning a goal, who was a massive miss for them last season. Kieran Trippier at right back. Mark Gay, if he plays, and if they sign him from Crystal Palace. But if not, then obviously you've got Fabian Schär. But you also got left centre back. You've got Botman. You got Kelly now as an option. You got Dan Burn, as well as Lewis Hall, who could play left back potentially, as well as Tino Livramento, who could fill in at right and left back. I think their attackers, right side of the forward line is definitely a big miss. And if they were to be able to keep Minter, it would have been better. But Almiron and Jacob Murphy are okay. If they were to sign a right winger, I would maybe even be saying maybe in fourth with no European football next season. If you consider the fact that the amount of injuries they had last year, and the fact that they had a squad that wasn't able to cope with similar injuries like the likes of Man United and Chelsea, and the fact that they still did alright, I think that if Newcastle are okay with injuries, they sign a right winger, they keep Eddie Howe, which I think they will now. I actually think Newcastle are going to be in fifth. So I think they're a lot better. And no European football is one of the key factors for me in that decision, because I think some of the other sides, I mean, Chelsea have got Conference League football. How much of a distraction is that going to be? I don't know, because I don't rate them very highly at all. So
That's a really good point, especially about European football. You're right, and I do like Newcastle. I think with Joelinton and Tonali obviously coming back this season, it's just the way I think they were set up last season. I think it's less about the personnel, and just it did seem quite a drastic change, I think, from that we saw 2 seasons ago where they got Champions League football, and it just didn't. There never really seemed to be much protection in their back line, and that's all it was for me. It just did look a little bit worrying. But again, probably overran in midfield, missing those key players, and again, obviously Botman out for a long part of the season too. So I could definitely be convinced on Newcastle potentially moving higher. But should we see who's in our 6th and 7th first of all?
oh god, I did have a feeling 1 to 8 will be where we disagree. So in 7th, I've gone for Tottenham Hotspur, and in 6th, I've gone for Manchester United.
Okay, so we do have one agreement in there.
Let me guess, it's Spurs.
No, it's not Spurs. It is Man United.
Okay.
Found it quite difficult to place them in this. I think I had them at one point. I had them in 8th again, and then I think I bumped them up to 7th, and then I don't know, it felt a bit different, sort of the feeling at Man United this season. I know they finished 8th last season, but I just think with the purchase via Ineos, there does seem to be a good bit of positivity injected into the side. And I think a club of Man United's size, that is a huge, huge thing. I did have them in fifth as well, I think, at 1.2, but I pushed them down to fifth. I think if they can get De Ligt and Mazraoui over the line, I think they need that centre-back cover. With obviously Lenny Euro, obviously he's going to be out injured for a while too. Still not amazingly impressed maybe by how United play. It's not the most exciting. I still think it's gelling. I just think they still have a good, strong squad. I think Kobbie Mainoo's going to have another exceptional season. Bruno Fernandes, I think, will probably step up again this year. Højlund or Xerxes playing up front. I think that is two really, really strong options to have as strikers. And hopefully this season again, we'll see more of Diallo, we'll see Garnacho, even having sort of players like Anthony and Mount, not exceptional well-beating players, but really good squad depth. So yeah, I think sixth place feels right for Man United, and I think this season it is going to look better, and I think Ten Hag is going to do a better job this season and push them on a little bit further.
Okay, yeah, I completely agree with you on all those points, really. And if there are any Man United fans watching this thinking, why have we not got them in the top four? Well, I'll give you my reason for it. And I just think, regardless of who Man United sign, they need to be sorting out the injuries that they get. Because already before the start of the season, Rasmus Højlund is out injured. I think Lenny Euro is out for 3 months. Luke Shaw, Tyrone Malacia. I mean, where is Malacia? I just think that they constantly keep getting injuries to key positions and multiple positions. So I think if you think about where they finished in the league last year, plus the fact that they're probably going to end up going far in the Europa League because they won the FA Cup as well, and the fact that, they do have issues to address, but if Man United do finish sixth this season, it's not the end of the world. If they finish sixth in 3 years' time and Erik ten Hag is still the manager, then that's a bit of a worry. But I think sixth place and another cup run is probably fine for them at the moment, and it's all about stepping stones to working your way into making a squad that's able to compete with the likes of Manchester City and Arsenal. So yeah, I actually agree with you on sixth place for Man United. It just means then we have to find some positions for some of these places, because if we agree on sixth Man United,
yeah, this is going to be tough.
I actually don't want to move Man United, because if we both agree, I think we should stay there.
Yeah,
because I don't really see them going any lower or higher. Yeah, so pencil Man United in sixth, which then means that you have Aston Villa in seventh, don't you? And then you have Tottenham Hotspur in the top four. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, just touch on Villa first. I think they've signed some really, really good squad depth this year. I really like the signings of Maatsen, of Barkley, Onana and Philogene. I think all of those are great options. I don't think any of them go straight into their starting lineup. I just think they're going to be really good cover for them, especially with Champions League football coming this season. I think it's great that they are at Champions League football. I don't think they're going to get out the group, I suppose, as a Champions League prediction. Obviously, I haven't seen their group, and they may surprise a few. I just don't think they have the quality in their squad just yet. And I think the two losses of Douglas Luiz, an absolutely huge loss, one of their best players, and Diaby, I think, is a really underrated loss. I know he didn't play too much last season, and it was normally Bailey starting, but to have him as squad depth and to have him as cover coming off the bench, I think was really, really impactful. And I think if he was still at Villa, maybe if they didn't get such a big offer for him from the Saudi League, we could have seen a lot more of him this year, and I'm a massive fan of his, so I think that's a big loss. I just think, again, Champions League football is going to be quite a big distraction for them, and I do worry with Emery that obviously in his second season at Arsenal he did struggle. He did towards the end of his time in PSG start to struggle as I think sort of teams figured out how to play against the way that he plays out of the back. I think is a big worry. And it just has a bit of a chance, I think, of happening again this year. So, yeah, for Villa, I think they are going to have a bit of a drop, go down to seventh. But, again, I still think seventh place for Villa and where they were a couple of seasons ago would still be an amazing achievement for Emery and the club.
I absolutely agree. I think if Aston Villa were to get not Champions League football, but European football of any kind next year, regardless of how they go about doing it, then I think that would be an absolute win for them. And another way for them to build up the European experience of the side and attract better players as well, especially considering the new way that European football is going to be doing how they place the teams in the Champions League. So just being in Europe will help your coefficient, and if Aston Villa were to be in the Champions League again next season or the season after, then it would really help if they were just in Europe in general. I completely agree with you. I think Douglas Luiz is a massive loss. I think Musa Diaby probably isn't as big of a loss as he should have been, just because of how much or how little he played last year and his output. And I think Philogene will come in and actually do an alright job as a sub deputy to Leon Bailey. I do also think they've also got Morgan Rogers. They got McGinn as well. You can do that, and also you've got to remember they've also got Emi Buendia returning from his ACL last year. He's definitely going to be another option as well. I do agree with you. I think in terms of European football, I think it will mentally affect them, not physically, just because they had Conference League football
Mm.
last year. They got all the way to the semi-finals and lost to Olympiacos in the two legs, which everyone had kind of expected them to do quite easily, and they ended up winning the whole competition. But I think mentally it'll affect them because they'll have two more Champions League games, and it'll be the big game on the Tuesday or the Wednesday night. And then can they go again on the weekend, and then can they go away to the likes of Wolves and Brentford and grind out a result? And yeah, I think mentally that'll be the big issue. Yes, they still need to find a deputy for Ollie Watkins as well. John Duran's still there. He's still being linked with a move away. There are some question marks, but I am okay to drop. So obviously, if you haven't figured out, I have Aston Villa in the Champions League places. I'm okay to drop him out of the Champions League places. How far though, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I can see them finishing
Mm.
seventh. I wouldn't go down as far as eighth personally. Um,
No, that's fair.
so between Newcastle, Chelsea, Aston Villa, and you've got Spurs in the Champions League places.
Yeah, should we touch on Spurs just before we decide on anything?
Yeah, go on.
So you've got them down in seventh.
Yes.
Why? Yeah, just why? I guess. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Spurs this coming season?
See, I thought you was the Arsenal fan was having a bit lower down than you clearly have, but clearly not. So I'm torn because I think the highest they could finish is fourth, but I also think the lowest they'll finish is seventh. So anywhere between them, I'm actually quite happy with. I just think with Dominic Solanke, they'll be much better. I think Archie Gray is a phenomenal talent, but they had so many injuries, and as soon as key players were out injured, they struggled massively. And I think it will help that there's no Asia Cup this year, so they won't miss the players like Heung-min Son. There's no AFCON this year, so they won't miss players like Basuma and Sarr, which was the entire midfield for the first half of the season. And they probably will help them do better. I'm not sure if they're ready to do two games a season with Ange Postecoglou's system. I think it's very intense, it's very taxing on the body, and if anything, it might lead to more injuries rather than less. So I had to put someone in seventh, and I didn't want to put Spurs in seventh because I think they are on an upward trajectory. I just think if there's decided who could potentially fall off a little bit, it could be Spurs because I think what Ange is trying to do, he's trying to build a squad that's able to compete for the very first and top place in the Premier League. And I think in the defence, they've got on paper, the players could do that, but they're never all fit at the same time. Van der Ven will pick up injuries, Romero will get suspended, Udoji will pick up injuries. And I think Archie Gray, while I think he's a phenomenal talent, like I just said, I think he's still very young. James Maddison will pick up injuries as well. Dominic Solanke, first time playing, making a move for the first time. Is Son only going to get older? Is Kulusevski perfect for the right hand side, or does he need to, maybe do a bit better? They're just more question marks, and I don't think they have the answers for them just yet. Will they recruit anyone, and will that change between now and the end of the window? I'm not quite sure personally. And I just think that if a side were to drop off, I think it would be Spurs rather than anyone else. Because I think if Villa could drop off, but the only reason I'm not having them dropping off as much is because of Unai Emery. It's just because of Unai Emery. Because I just rate him so highly as a manager. So yeah, that was my thought process.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and I definitely think there's some good points in terms of injury. I didn't want to think what if blank gets injured for a lot of my predictions, and I feel like with Spurs they have a really really good starting 11. I was so impressed with them last year, completely underrated them in terms of my prediction. I think I had them in 8th or ninth, just because I thought the loss of Harry Kane would be a lot more impactful than it was. And I think Solanke does almost feel like the missing piece of that puzzle for me. I think with him playing up front, you can get Son back out on the left. You've got Maddison in the 10, Kulusevski or Brennan Johnson, who I think was really underrated last year. Two DMs in behind, probably Basuma and Sarr. You could see Archie Gray in there. You could see Archie Gray playing right back and inverting if needed, as Porro and Udogi both do. I think they've got a really, really, really strong side. Really impressed with them last season. And they were so close to fourth position last year. I can't remember exactly how close it was. I think it was it was either 2 points or 4 points, I think, by the end. And that is just one result. And we were so impressed with Villa. And I just think Spurs have improved. Really good sign. They've got rid of a lot of players who don't fit their system in terms of Højbjerg and Perisic. Gill's gone out on loan. Dyer's obviously made his move permanent. I just think, and I think Andrew's going to have learnt a lot from last season. I still think they're going to play exactly the same way, but he is a very, very good tactician. I think there'll be little tweaks that'll make them even better. And yeah, for me, straight into fourth place. I think for me, that was not an easy decision, but I just felt quite confident that I think Spurs are going to be really impressive again this year.
Yeah, I think versatility is going to play a huge part, like you mentioned with Archie Gray and some of the players playing multiple positions. I'm not sure they have the best. They probably have a decent 14-15. I'm not sure after that, if I'm being completely honest. I think they've still got Ben Davies deputising in some positions. I think today they sold Emerson Royale. If Madison were to get injured, would you then have to play Kulusevski in the 10 and then Brendan Johnson out wide on the right? But then you've got Richarlison covering for Son, Solanke, and Brendan Johnson. And then, I can see Spurs making progression. Okay, we've got to come to a decision here because clearly we've got a top three.
This is going to be a big puzzle, I think, to sort out, and we may have to move United, I think, in the end.
Maybe. I
would like to keep Spurs in 4th or 5th for me.
How strongly do I feel about Newcastle? Because I'm okay with Spurs 4th or 5th. I know what you said about you don't like to think about it with injuries, but I'm talking about players who have had a history of getting injured rather than players who don't get injured. I wouldn't talk about Declan Rice. Oh, if Declan Rice gets injured, Arsenal screwed. But he hasn't got injured in the last 2 years, so that's not really a valid point. But yeah,
sure.
As strongly as you feel about Spurs in 4th or 5th, I feel strongly about Chelsea can go no higher than 7th, in my opinion.
Okay. So should we maybe go? Should we maybe go Chelsea and United to take up 7th and 8th?
And then
Spurs, Villa and Newcastle 4th, 5th, 6th in some sort of order.
I could do Newcastle in 6th, Villa 5th. I think Villa 5th and Spurs 4th. Am I putting United?
What do we think? Does that mean United at 7th or 8th?
No. No. United in 7th. Chelsea in 8th. Newcastle
Chelsea in 8th, sorry, yeah.
Chelsea 8th, Newcastle 7th. Sorry. Chelsea 8th, Man United 7th, Newcastle 6th, Aston Villa 5th, Spurs 4th.
I think that's a fair compromise because I'm definitely happy moving Newcastle for me up from 8th to 6th. I think, like you've said, in terms of the players they're going to have coming back, I think is going to be a big impact. And maybe I was looking a little bit too much at last season. In Chelsea, I mean, as an Arsenal fan, I'm happy with them in 8th, even if it's 3 off what I thought. Again, I think they're going to be one of those teams that, like I said, they could be 5th, they could be 10th, honestly.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. And then Aston Villa and Spurs. In my opinion, I think Aston Villa have a better squad depth than Spurs, which means they could compete in multiple fronts.
Oh, 100%.
Bit better.
No, I 100% agree in terms of squad depth. Villa look a lot more equipped for the whole season.
Oh, okay. Because you're saying, do you think maybe Emery might get found out system tactically, and more teams will clock on to how the Villa play out the back, and you think they'll... Yeah, but Spurs would just play one way, and then we're just going to do that better.
I think a lot of Villa as well last season was a very good rhythm, and I think a very good atmosphere, and I think potentially we could see how Newcastle were in the league last season with their Champions League. I think they did suffer some defeats. They started off quite well, spirits were quite high, and then I think things got quite damp the way that they performed in the Champions League, and I could just see the same to Villa, and I think they'll knock them down a bit, whereas I think Spurs will probably have to play a few of their first teamers in the Europa League, but I think if anything that's going to help them get a little bit further in that competition. I think they'll be sort of more consistently performing over the whole season, which I think is quite a big thing.
Yeah, but there's a chance then that Aston Villa could not qualify immediately for the round of 16. They could go into the playoffs and potentially lose that, or if they weren't even to get to that stage. And then, with the squad depth that they have and the quality they have, 1 game a week from January onwards, that could be massive.
Yeah.
Ooh, I definitely think it is
Ooh.
these two. No, well, yeah,
I mean, it is what it is. We had them in 4th and 7th.
yeah. But the thing is, yeah, I think Aston Villa are also still making transfers. Weirdly enough, I think they're trying to sign. I can't remember his name. Gertruda, the right back from Feyenoord, who can also play centre back in defensive midfield. He's gonna, yeah, maybe look for an attacker as well. I need a bit more signings, and personally from Spurs. I think, who would I like them to sign? Probably another forward player, probably, and they've already got 5 and they're on the books midfielders. I don't know.
It's a really tough one. It's a really, really tough one.
I'm okay putting Spurs 4th. We need to move on at some point. I think if Aston Villa, I think mentally.
I can't believe I'm sat on a podcast arguing Spurs to finish higher in the table somewhere, which is just.
I've written it in. I've written Spurs 4th, Aston Villa 5th. We need to move on at some point.
I was going to say, I'm only going to push for Spurs to be 4th as well, just because it's different to last season.
Where you had them doing,
it's a
what,
slight
8th?
Change. No, as in because Villa obviously finished 4th last year and Spurs finished 5th, it makes it so it's not exactly the same table.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And also the years are probably just make a decision. I'm like, okay, fine, we'll make a decision. We'll go with that. So Spurs 4th, Aston Villa 5th.
You can have one in the pocket for these next 3 as well if we have any.
So Liverpool are winning the league then.
I know you haven't written that. I know how much of a pessimist you are.
What? Well,
come on, tell me that they're in 3rd place then. Come on.
I mean, yeah, they are in 3rd place, but they're not too far away from Manchester City and Arsenal. Yeah, so I've got Liverpool in 3rd, obviously, because when I was thinking about it, in terms of Liverpool dropping down further in the table, again, not just a position, I was thinking about points. Liverpool got 82, Aston Villa in 4th got 68, and then Spurs, I think, were 2 points behind them at 66. Is there any team that's going to make up a gap of at least 14 points to catch up with Liverpool? And I just thought, even despite the fact that Liverpool have lost Thiago Alcantara, Joe Matip, and Adrian San Miguel on free transfers, I think they've loaned out Calvin Ramsey, and they're going to sell Fabio Carvalho to Brentford, who wasn't even at the club last season anyway because he was out on loan. Are they a worse side than last year? I'd probably say yes, just because they don't have a world-class manager in the club and they've got a potentially world-class manager now on the slot. First time in the Premier League, he will make mistakes. We'll have some teething problems in terms of his system. But just that points difference in that swing, Liverpool still have the quality. If Mo Salah can be fit for more than for next season, the more than he was last season because he picked up an injury for, I feel like the first time in his Liverpool career. I think Liverpool did also have some injuries in terms of midfield, and John Mata was out the whole season. They couldn't rely on him. But I think the young players coming through as well, they've been really bright, like Gerald Kwanzaa, Conor Bradley, Seven Bacchetic is back now as well. I think Liverpool will also sign a defensive midfielder for certain, and they may sign a centre back as well. I personally like them too, but I don't think they will if I had to put money on it. But yeah, I think just 14 points to make up at the very minimum. I just think it's too much, and I think Liverpool will be 3rd, but I don't think they will be 1st or 2nd because I think the other 2 sides are, just maybe a little bit too good.
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, I couldn't say more. As you said, still a world-class 11. Not really many personnel changes. Szoboszlai, McAllister, another season where I think they'll be even better than they were last year. Cody Gakpo's come off the back of a really good Euros. Still, really, really good side. Yeah, as you said, maybe not pushing those top 2 just yet, but I think if Slot can fit in, make some good signings, not even needed this window, just over the coming seasons, then Liverpool, I think, could be back up there with the quality that they still have. But yeah, 3rd place for me was a very easy decision, I think, this time.
Yeah, and that, of course, leaves the final 2, Manchester City and Arsenal.
Toby, shall we talk about both sides and then reveal who we've gone for to win the league?
Okay.
So should we start with Arsenal? How we think they're going to do next season?
Yeah. So why did you go first as the Arsenal fan, actually?
Yeah, again, just feel really positive for the season coming up. Calafiore, I think, is a really, really strong signing. Maybe not one that it feels like we necessarily need, but I think it shows the level that we're at, that we're thinking that, oh, we don't need a potentially world-class defender over the next couple of years. Can play left back, can invert, can play centre back, looks really, really good. And I think is quite different to the options that we have. He's a much sort of more confident ball carrier compared to Gabriel, which I think gives us another option, and obviously very different to Zinchenko playing left back, who has looked pretty good in pre-season again. And I think maybe a few people wrote him off a little bit early, and he'll probably be our starting left back going into the start of the season. I think if we can keep all our players fit, looking at Thomas Partey, looking at Jorginho, I think if Martinelli can get firing again, and if we sign Mikel Moreno, I think that's going to be a really, really good signing, and the exact sort of midfielder that we need, really. Someone who can play and cover that left-sided position that we saw Declan Rice excel in. Means Declan Rice can sit back in the six as well when needed. Moreno could be coming back into the six potentially. We've got Jorginho Partey there. Yeah, just, again, feeling really, really confident, and picking a title winner was really difficult because of how strong I think Arsenal look again this year. And I think it's going to be super, super close. And it's going to come right down to the wire again. And yeah, just feeling really confident and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think Arsenal are in a really good place at the moment. I think ideally Mika Marino for some reason seems to have stalled the whole move. I think having him in, having that done before the start of the season, and having him and Calafiori would have been like the ideal place to be. And then probably a forward player, perhaps if Nketiah or Reece Nelson or maybe both of them were to leave. It seems like the Eddie Nketiah deal to Marseille at the time of recording has broken down completely, and it does seem like it's gone a bit quiet on Reece Nelson where he's going to go. I do think signing a forward will depend on one or both of them leaving, because I think you've got on the left hand side you've got Trossard and Martinelli. On the right hand side you've got Saka and Reece Nelson, and down the middle you've got Havertz, Jesus, and Nketiah. Yes, obviously you've got what's his name, Fabio Vieira can also play on the right hand side. Yes, you got Havertz who can play in the midfield positions as well. But I just think in terms of squad depth and keeping everyone happy morale wise, I do think you need to sell a couple of those, and those being Eddie Nketiah and Reece Nelson. Then you sign that world class striker, and then I think you can really see Arsenal compete. Because while they probably played like the best team last season, one of the big issues I had with Arsenal was they didn't get over 90 points, because they've got the Centurion season Man City under the belt. They went toe to toe with Liverpool and they got 98 points. They went toe to toe again. I think in the 21-22 season they got 93 points and won the league. To be Man City, you have to get 90 points or above, and Arsenal weren't able to do that. But there is still the possibility that they get 95 points and Man City just get 96. But at least if you get 95 and you get into the high 90s, then you can say you've done everything possible. And Arsenal still weren't able to win the league, and just go, fair enough. I do think they also need to be winning a trophy this season, whether that's just a cup competition or if it's the big ones like the Premier League or the Champions League. I do think if they weren't to go for another season without winning anything, then I think that would really, more than anything, I think they have the players to do it, but I think morale-wise, it would just really deflate them and just think, what's the point? Because you can try your hardest no matter what, but sometimes you just need a bit of luck, and sometimes you need fixtures to go your way, sometimes you need injuries to go your way, and sometimes you just need Man City not to be as good. And as they're going for the fifth time in a row in terms of winning the Premier League, maybe this is it, maybe it's not, who really knows. And Manchester City, they are who they are. They're one of the strongest teams in the league, one of the best sides in world football, and potentially a bit weaker on the back of losing Julian Alvarez, but it is Man City, so they'll probably still be exactly as they were.
Yeah, and even with losing Alvarez, it's got a really good fee for him. He will be a big, big loss in that squad. He is such a versatile attacker to have on someone who, wherever you ask him to play, does an exceptional job. They have got Savio obviously coming in from Girona, who was really, really good last season. It'd be quite interesting to see him in the Prem and see how much he does play. And maybe the sort of winger that Man City were lacking a little bit. I think since Mahrez has left, a lot of people have been saying that. So yeah, not really too much to say from City. The only thing I can say potentially about City, obviously best team in the world. The only caveat is, can Guardiola keep that sort of momentum and winning mentality going? I think now they've won 4 in a row. They have already won the Champions League. What is sort of the motivation of going into the league this season? Is to win 5 in a row. Yeah, would be amazing. The 4 in a row, I think, was a bit more special because nobody had ever done it before. That was such a big thing for them to be able to do. So I think if Guardiola can get them really, really G'd up again as they were last season, get them playing to their best, then it's a very difficult conversation, really, to say many negatives about them.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best things about Guardiola. He said clearly Julian Alvarez wanted to go, so he let him go. But then the players underneath him are really hungry and want to make their mark on the team and also professionally as players.
Mm-hmm.
You got the likes of Oscar Bob, James McAtee, Jeremy Doku will want to have a better season than he did last year, kick on a bit more. Jack Grealish will want to have a better season after he had a very poor season last year. Kevin De Bruyne was out injured for the majority last year. Everyone's now saying Phil Foden's the main man in the field. He's got a point to prove as well. I think Rico Lewis will say, right, he wants to make his mark as Man City team at the expense of Kyle Walker. I think Gavardo is a professional. He want to get better as well. So there is still motivation within that squad just to be better than they were last year or just cement themselves even more into that side of the first teamer. And I think Guardiola is just a master at squad manipulation. He'll be able to rest players. He'll be able to take one out, put one in, and they'll only be playing max 30 games a season. And I think we saw from last year, I think no Man City centre-back play more than 30 games. Which I'm just like, how on earth have you managed to manipulate your squad so well that you can bring players in, take players out, bring players in, and no drop off whatsoever? And I just think it's incredible. I think Guardiola is incredible, and they have a really good chance of going 5 in a row. But will Arsenal stop them, Toby? This is what we're here to find out. 1 and 2, who's it going to be?
I have had to go for Arsenal to win the league. I'm the first time ever I think I'm predicting them to do it. I just think our defence is really, really going to carry us again next season, and I think that is what is going to get us over the line. We still had a few games, I think, at the start of last season where it wasn't quite there, and I just think once we were going, as you said, I think we were playing the best, and I think Man City were sort of at like 90% most of the season, which I think if that happens again and Arsenal are as good as we were at times, then we can do it. Again, it's going to be one of those where if we do it, it's going to come down to the wire. And I just wanted to do it. I'm sick of predicting Man City to win, to be honest. So, yeah, let's be really, really optimistic, not be a classic pessimistic Arsenal fan and just think City are going to do it. Let's have belief straight from the off, Arsenal to win the league.
And so we have to put Arsenal in first because I've also done the same. I'm also sick of Manchester City winning the league every year. So I've gone for Arsenal in first and Manchester City in second. Surely at some point they're going to drop off. We're going to be keep predicting this till we're 60 and they'll still have won like 59 league titles in a row. But yeah, it's fine. Arsenal first, Manchester City second. At some point, injuries or suspensions or just bad luck, bad form, something has got to work in Arsenal's favour. And I think they're only going to get better. And I think at some point Manchester City could go, oh, not again. And most importantly, they won the Community Shield, which means that they are less likely to win the Premier League. That is an absolute fact. And there we have it. Our 1 to 20. Yeah, finally. Should we run through it?
Yeah, shall we run through it? Yeah. Should we go for it? So yeah, in 20th position, Leicester. 19th, we've gone for Ipswich. 18th, Southampton. 17th place is Nottingham Forest. 16th, Brentford. 15th, Fulham. 14th, Bournemouth. 13th, Wolves. 12th is Everton. 11th, Brighton. 10th, Palace. 9th, West Ham. 8th is Chelsea. 7th, United. 6th, Newcastle. 5th, Aston Villa. 4th, Spurs. 3rd, Liverpool. And the two that matter, City in second place and Arsenal in first. And yeah, a lot of hope there, I think, more than anything. I don't think either of us would put any bets onto us to win the league, but in a strange way, I think a lot of people want it to happen. So come on, the Gunners.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I think it's anyone apart from Manchester City. It could literally be anyone. So
yeah.
Come on, Liverpool. Now we've got no chance. It's fine. Well, there we have it. Those were our 1 to 20 Premier League predictions for the 24-25 Premier League season. Oh, that has been a long one, but we got there eventually. Sorry to the newly promoted sides we've got going straight back down. Hopefully someone can do something there. And yeah, I think we're all just up for the football being back and the Premier League season starting again, because I think we're all sick and tired of the friendlies. Euros were great, but now it's time to get back to proper football. like if we're going to be here every single week during the course of the season, starting next week as well, to review game week 1 in the Premier League. So make sure you subscribe, you give us a follow, give us a like, comment down below, all that good stuff. Answer our question is, we'll be here on YouTube, Spotify and Apple Podcasts throughout the entirety of the upcoming season. Aren't you absolutely buzzing about that? We know we are. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you in the next one.